Just because we know how the human body operates doesn't mean I wasn't created.
Well, not exactly. It kind of depends. Like, if your explanation for how the body operates doesn't necessarily entail some kind of supernatural deity or anything outside of nature being responsible for how that body operates, then it definitely means that God is not responsible for that body operating or being there or anything like that. So, I mean, unless your explanation for how our bodies operate include God, then you can't use it as evidence for God. That's the entire point of that. But if you heathens want to fuck around and find out how wrong this guy is about a bad atheist argument, then please stay tuned. What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? I'm the Godless Engineer, and I critically analyze apologist claims to give you the best arguments and information so that you can stand up and use your voice. Today, we're going to be taking a look at a clip from a Christian TikToker who has some advice for Christians out there, or maybe atheists. I'm not exactly sure who his target audience is, but he has some advice on one particular argument that gets brought up in discussions. I think he's kind of ripping it out of context, but I'll let you heathens be the judge. But I do want to let you guys know that we have a channel for short form content just like this video. It's called Godless Engineer Shorts. I'm going to have a link down below in the description for you guys to follow and subscribe to that channel if you like more of these bite-sized little segments of larger videos. So go on ahead, go over there now and subscribe, because we're going to try to have videos posting there like nearly every day of the week. All right, let's get to this guy's shitty video.
Maybe you've heard this argument before. Oh, well, people used to think that lightning came from the gods, but now we know how that works. Therefore, God or gods do not exist.
You see, this is why I think he's kind of ripping this particular thing out of context, because typically whenever this comes up, or at least whenever I use this particular argument, it's in response to somebody saying that some natural event or some natural phenomena could only ever happen because God exists. So that's why I think that he's ripping it out of context, because then I'll retort with, well, there's plenty of things in the past that we thought God was responsible for, but we know now God is not responsible for. So it just kind of seems like any of these things that you could point to are just going to be later overturned by a better natural explanation. So it's not that it proves that God doesn't exist. It just proves that several lines of arguments that I hear from apologists just simply don't make sense. I've never heard nor ever used this particular response as evidence against God. I do have to say that it's a pretty good way to come to the conclusion that God most likely doesn't exist. But as far as it just being an argument on its own, I don't think that it disproves a God. I think that it disproves our current definitions of God, but I don't think that it disproves God on the whole.
I would just like to point out this is not a real argument on whether or not God exists.
Well, no, it's not, because it's a response to somebody else providing an argument that's dumb as fuck.
Just because we know how something works does not disprove the existence of God, nor the idea that God created the universe.
See, this is where the nuance comes in right here, because all it shows is that God is not responsible for this one thing. But then you come back in and say, oh, well, it doesn't disprove that God created the universe. It's like, well, when we're talking about like the human body or rain or any other natural process, we're not necessarily talking about the entire universe. So it kind of seems like you're shifting subjects here. Kind of a deceptive way to have a conversation, if you ask me. But I do agree that this argument on its face does not disprove God, and it doesn't mean that God doesn't exist. But again, atheists aren't coming out with this as just like an argument that stands on its own. This is a response to bullshit that apologists feed us.
Here's an example. I can tell you how all of the organs in my body work. My heart, my liver, my stomach, everything, whatever. Just because we know how the human body operates doesn't mean I wasn't created.
Well, not exactly. As far as the body operating, I mean, that's not a conversation that includes like where did our human body come from and all this other stuff. It just talks about how our body operates. So, I mean, that's again shifting topics there, which makes it look a little disingenuous on your part, but anyways, I digress. Our explanations for how the body works would also explain how our bodily functions formed in the first place via evolution. Since we have a natural explanation for how our body developed the way that it does and for how our body operates the way that it does, that leaves no room for God to be the creator of the human body or anything in that particular area of reality. If you have a natural explanation, it will always supersede a supernatural explanation like God.
And I know that seems obvious, but that's exactly my point. It's really a misunderstanding of epistemology. Just because I can tell you how something operates doesn't explain why it's there in the first place.
I can agree with this, but again, I feel like he's kind of shifting topic areas because discussing how the body operates and how that's a natural process. These are chemical processes that occur within the human body, and that's just how it works. I don't understand why you have to get into the conversation of, well, how did our body form? Or how did the human body come to be the way that it is? I don't say, like, that's a totally different conversation than how does your body function. So I'm quite confused as to why you would lump that in with that particular conversation. But the thing is that we do have natural explanations that explain how our human bodies form. So that coupled with how our body works means that there is no room, and I'll say this for like the third time, there is no room for God in that equation. It's all controlled by natural processes.
Science is just the tool we use in how we understand the universe that God has made.
You see, and that's where you fuck up again, because you're showing your presuppositions here. You think that science is geared to explain the reality that God has created. And I feel like if you go into a scientific question thinking, we're going to figure out what God's telling us today, you're not doing science. You're doing theology. You're doing religion. You're not treating it like a scientific question anymore. You're treating it like a theological question. And no, science is not a tool to be used by religious people to describe God's world. Science is a tool to be used to describe our reality, regardless of whether or not a God exists. So the fact that you start off with God created this world and then jump to science as a tool used to describe this world created by God shows that you have a bias that you really can't get past. You can't see past your faith in order to understand the tool that science is. And that's incredibly frustrating. Anyways, this guy frustrated the fuck out of me. This was a TikTok video that I actually didn't get a chance to do on a live stream, and so I decided to do this as sort of a warm-up thing for recording new videos for the channel. But if you want to get more short form content like this, go over to Godless Engineer Shorts, where we're going to be posting short form videos just like this every single day. So head on over there now and subscribe. Oh, but wait, don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens.